What is old growth? It depends on who is given the definition. An environmentalist, researcher, forester, and temple manager all offer views on the term at the middle of logging debates in Central Oregon.
Well, it's not my definition. I'm not a scientist, so I have to preface that way. But I was taught by the Umatilla National Forest, the Forest Service, how to inventory old growth. So they taught me to measure how many live old growth trees per acre, which is arbitrarily defined as 21 inches in diameter or greater. But for ponderosa pine, that's fairly accurate for that tree being over 150 years old based on studies. And how many snags per acre as well, that's standing dead trees. And those would only have to be 17 inches in diameter or greater because of the loss of bark, and 6 feet tall or higher. And how many old growth logs per acre, 17 inches in diameter or over 6 feet long, 6 feet or longer. A tree that's old growth will have a flatter top than younger trees, where you can see they have pointed tops. And that's because the younger trees are still growing and the old growth trees have kind of stopped growing up so much as they're growing out.
In describing old growth, it depends on where you are in the landscape. High elevation forest, for that old growth will look different than like where we are right here, which is lower elevation and ponderosa pine old growth. Since we're here in this ponderosa pine forest, I would describe it as a stand that's more open with a variation from very small to very large trees, but the large trees tend to dominate the stand, and particularly your eye, because you see them. They're big and they have that orange bark.
We're in a ponderosa pine stand. It is what I would consider old growth. We do see a complex structure in here of seedlings, saplings, smaller trees, and then very large old trees. Although I have to be careful to immediately say that diameter and age do not directly correlate.
I think the definition is kind of elusive. There's a lot of different definitions that float around there. Some depend on the number of trees per acre of certain sizes. Some depend upon the number of trees per acre of certain ages. But to me, I just look at it and I go, this is a pretty diverse stand. You've got a lot of big old trees. You got a lot of dead trees. You got a lot of young trees. You've got trees that are fading out like the flat top pine in the back, but it's also a stand that's not really healthy today because it's overstocked. There's too many trees on this stand. It's hard to come up with a hard and fast rule because it varies so much by local site conditions, whether or not you've got good precipitation, how much competition you have. So there's a lot of factors, and that's why it's really kind of hard to just have one finite set of definitions on what constitutes old growth.